US President Donald Trump's first big legislation of his second term. His big tax bill has cleared the US House of Representatives in a late-night vote. But what does it mean for India and for Indians? For Indian nationals staying in the US, sending money back home could now burn a hole in your pockets. The bill, dubbed One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that's what the bill is called, proposes a 5% tax on all international money transfers made by non-immigrant visa holders and green card holders. When passed as a law, it would withhold 5% of the remitted amount at the point of transfer. No exemption threshold limit has been set yet, which means it would even apply to transfers of small denominations. This could majorly impact Indian households and exert downward pressure on the Indian rupee. Well, coming back now to how it impacts the immigrants. Well, in multiple ways. First, it provides $46.5 billion to revive construction of Trump's wall along the US-Mexico border and an infusion of $350 billion for his deportation agenda. And these, by the way, are not just true for illegal immigrants, but also those living legally in the US. Now, as far as Indians are concerned, the law could be a massive financial blow to nearly 4.5 million Indians living in the US, including nearly 3.2 million people of Indian origin. And according to a remittance survey published by the Reserve Bank of India, the Indian community may have to reportedly pay $1.6 billion as remittance tax. And that's huge and comes at the risk of even destabilizing the Indian currency. This perhaps could be hard-hitting for millions of Indian families in states like Kerala, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar who rely on remittances to cover essential expenses like education, healthcare and housing, among others. The Taliban seems to be in a bit of a fix. We say that because on the one hand, its strained ties with Islamabad is pushing it to lean towards India. On the other hand, Taliban leaders have been engaging with counterparts from Pakistan and China for regional stability and increased economic connectivity and even cooperation amid what seems to be a balancing act. The Taliban is reportedly eyeing an India-managed port to facilitate its global trade and also reduce reliance on Pakistan. According to a report by the Economic Times, the Taliban regime has decided to focus on the Chahabad port in Iran, a port managed by India. Not just that, it is also considered to join the International North-South Transport Corridor, or INSTC, which is the ship, rail and road route for moving freight between India, Russia, Iran, Europe and Central Asia, perhaps serving as an important link to the Chahabad port. This is apparently in a bid to reduce Afghanistan's dependence on Pakistani ports. This is extremely important, extremely significant, as the port plays an important transit between Iran, India and Afghanistan. The progress on which has somewhat stalled after the Taliban took control of Kabul in 2021. But as differences between Kabul and Islamabad widen owing to a slew of factors, including the latter expelling Afghan refugees, the Taliban has now started leaning towards India and Iran, thus bringing the port back to focus. In May last year, India and Iran struck a 10-year deal for the management of the Chahabad port, which is Iran's first deep-water port located about 72 kilometers from China-run Gwadar port in Pakistan. This creates a direct sea trade link between India and Afghanistan, bypassing Pakistani port of Gwadar and Karachi altogether. Well, Taliban's turning its attention back to the Chahabad port project. It is also being viewed as the group asserting its independence from Pakistan. So, how is India responding to this? Positively so far. Of late, the ties between New Delhi and Kabul seem to be improving drastically. In the latest, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Afghanistan's Acting Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi have agreed to advance bilateral cooperation in several areas. Addressing a press briefing, MEA spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said Jaishankar had clarified it will not allow Pakistan to act as a spoiler in ties between India and Afghanistan. And this comes after both the leaders met recently, marking the first formal engagement between an Indian and a Taliban minister since 1999. In the last few weeks, India has also amped up its diplomatic outreach, and that's in the aftermath of the Pahalgam terror attack and its military strike Operation Sindoor on May 7th to amass Taliban support amid worsening ties with Islamabad. However, this is being taken with a pinch of salt by China, the country which seems to be the most threatened by this. China is persistent on its efforts to broker peace between Kabul and Islamabad. On May 20th, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Mohammad Ishaqdar and Muttaqi, convened in China for a trilateral consultation with China's Foreign Affairs Minister Wang Yi, with the three sides reaffirming their commitment to develop their ties. They also agreed to expand the China-Pakistan economic corridor to Afghanistan. However, the challenges remain, and it all now boils down to India, if it can perhaps reap the benefits of its ties with the Taliban and further its strategic interests, while also walking very carefully. In a major escalation, Russia intercepted Ukrainian drones that targeted the Moscow airport. Halting flights, Russia has been unleashing drone swarms over Ukrainian cities, marking one of the most substantial aerial assault attempts since the war's inception. This surge in drone activity underscores the intensifying technological warfare between the two nations. Our next report telling you more.
Tension crackles along Ukrainian front lines as the artillery thunders in the distance. Ukrainian soldiers have had their eyes fixed on the horizon for a new weapon looming over the fast-changing, brutal and terrifying battlefield. Russia has unleashed a new wave of warfare that is as devastating as it is unpredictable. Thermobaric drones. These aren't just ordinary UAVs, they are flying bombs engineered to generate massive pressure waves and searing heat that can turn concrete fortresses into dust and leave entire districts in flames. In recent weeks, Russia has launched barrages of over 200 drones in a single night, mixing in ballistic missiles and guided bombs to maximize the chaos. Kyiv has not been lagging behind either, using drones to devastating effect. The air traffic around Moscow was disrupted as the Russian capital came under attack from Ukrainian drones. These are images of a drone that landed near a school in the Russian capital. Ukrainian armed forces have designed a new drone to operate under the cover of night. Called the Vampire, it carries up to 15 kilograms of munitions and is highly effective against moving and static enemy targets.
Vampire drone is manufactured in Ukraine and therefore is not dependent on foreign parts and munition. Munition and parts for Vampire drone can be produced in Ukraine.
As Russia refines its tactics using swarms to drain defenses and real drones to strike vital targets, Ukraine scrambles to adapt. According to reports, US President Donald Trump told European leaders that Russian President Putin is unwilling to pursue peace because he is convinced that he is winning the war against Ukraine. Russia has dismissed claims from Ukrainian and European officials that it is intentionally stalling the peace process. It says it plans to propose its conditions for the ceasefire, but declined to give a time frame. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
We start our bulletin with a story from the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C., one of the most protected and heavily guarded place on the planet. It was supposed to be a night of diplomacy, connection, and celebration. Instead, it turned into a tragedy. Gunfire erupted outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in downtown Washington, D.C. late on Wednesday night. What followed were scenes of horror, confusion, and heartbreak. Two Israeli embassy staffers, Yaron Lischensky and Sarah Lynn Milgrim, were shot dead just a few steps away from the venue. The suspected gunman, 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, has been seen loitering outside the museum, pacing, watching, waiting. Then, without warning, he opened fire with a handgun on a group of 4 people. Eyewitnesses say he later shouted "Free Palestine" while being arrested by the law enforcement.
The suspect who was detained is 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago. After the shooting outside the museum, he entered inside and then was detained. 2 people who were inside the museum at the time told the Associated Press that they heard at least 10 gunshots. Afterward, they saw the shooter inside the museum. He was wearing a red keffiyeh, which is a traditional Middle Eastern headdress. And while he was being detained, they told us that he shouted "Free Palestine."
In the chaos, Rodriguez, the suspected attacker, was briefly mistaken as a victim and allowed entry into the building before his true role in the tragedy was revealed.
We heard between 10 to 15 gunshots, roughly. I don't know the exact number. And all of us were a little bit startled, but, you know, I'm from D.C., so gunshots are not pleasant, but not something I've never heard before. And the security guard happened to let this guy in. I guess they were thinking that he was a victim. And he was covered in rain. He was clearly in trauma. He was in shock. And, you know, some of the people at the event brought him water. They sat him down. "Are you okay? Were you shot? What happened?" And he's like, "Somebody call the cops."
As the details emerged, a more tragic tale came to light. Lischensky worked as a research assistant at the Israeli embassy. He moved to Israel from Germany at the age of 16. He was also a passionate photographer, while Sarah Milgrim worked at the Israeli embassy's Department of Public Diplomacy. She was an American citizen. It has now been revealed that Lischensky had bought an engagement ring and was just days away from proposing to Milgrim during their planned trip to Jerusalem.
The couple that was gunned down tonight in the name of Free Palestine. It's a young couple about to be engaged. The young man purchased a ring this week with the intention of proposing to his girlfriend next week in Jerusalem. They were a beautiful couple who came to enjoy an evening in Washington's Cultural Center.
The shooting comes at a time of deepening global unrest. Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza continues, while ceasefire efforts remain stalled. The Jewish community, both in America and globally, now finds itself staring at the ugly face of violent anti-Semitism once again. The shooting comes at a volatile moment as fighting rages in Gaza and diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire are deadlocked. This incident has heightened fears for Israeli diplomats and Jewish communities worldwide. Israel's foreign minister called the shooting a direct result of toxic anti-Semitic incitement that has surged since the October 2023 Hamas terror attack.
This is what happens when leaders in the world surrender to the Palestinian terrorist propaganda and serve it. The statements and attacks blame Israel instead of Hamas. Hamas started the war on October 7th, is solely responsible for the war's continuation, and is solely responsible for the suffering of Israelis and Palestinians alike.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered security measures to be stepped up at Israeli diplomatic missions worldwide, while Israelis say they don't feel safe anywhere.
It's very sad to see that it's become a day-to-day event that all over the world, in Israel and all over the world, you hear about terror attacks on Jews and on Israelis, and it's constant and it never gives up. Jews don't feel safe anywhere. The reasons why these attacks happen is there's anti-Semitism and hatred of Zionists, of the will of Jews to live. That's the base of it. And any fighting between Jews is not the reason why other people want to attack Jews.
In other news, the Delhi Police Special Cell and Central Intelligence Agencies have dismantled an ISI-linked sleeper cell that was allegedly preparing for a massive terror strike on Indian soil. Officials believe that this plot was in motion even before the recent Pahalgam terror attack. The breakthrough came with the arrest of a key suspect, Ansar-ul-Mian Ansari, a Nepali origin agent working on the instructions from Pakistan's ISI. Officials arrested him from a hotel in New Delhi during a joint operation that unfolded between January and March this year. Well, Ansari crossed into India through Nepal, an old but a repeated tactic often exploited by Pakistan-backed elements. Officials say Ansari was on the verge of fleeing back to Pakistan when he was nabbed during interrogation, and Ansari admitted he was tasked with sending military secrets across the border. Forensic experts confirmed that the materials found on him were not just confidential. They were sensitive documents belonging to the Indian Armed Forces. During the interrogation, Ansari also disclosed information about the ISI's extensive espionage network. Ansari used to drive a cab in Qatar, and that's where, according to intelligence officials, he first encountered his ISI handler. And what followed was a journey into Pakistan, where he was allegedly indoctrinated and trained before being deployed to India. Based on Ansari's statements, security teams raided Ranchi and also apprehended another suspect identified as Akhlaq Azam. Azam allegedly played a crucial role both in assisting Ansari and also in gathering information and documents and then relaying them to handlers across the border. It's important to point out that Nepal has a major history in ISI operations. Nepal shares a long border with India, with some parts unguarded, making infiltration easier. Its proximity to states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal also provide easy access routes. And Pakistan's spy agency has long used Nepal as a launch pad, not just for moving operatives, but also for pumping in counterfeit Indian currency. The Mumbai 26/11 investigation also flagged Nepal's role. While the attackers came by sea, it said logistic support reportedly flowed in through the Nepal route. Besides Nepal, Pakistan's terror footprint is also expanding in neighboring Bangladesh. Late last month, the nexus of the Bangladeshi government with the Pakistani terror group Lashkar-e-Taiba was exposed. That's after a law advisor to Mohammad Yunus held a meeting with an LET operative in Dhaka, just mere days after the Pahalgam terror attack, claimed by the Resistance Front and LET proxy.
These activities has gone up in Nepal, but particularly in the Tarai regions. There are different actors coming from different countries, and Nepal definitely has to pay much attention to the activities which have been taking place in the southern part of Nepal.